My name is Caroline Masters. I'm 59 years old, and as of 2:42 p.m. last Friday, I was officially unemployed. 3 days. That's all I had left until my pension fully vested. 28 years of detailed audits, late-night policy rewrites, and whispered warnings shoved aside in boardrooms. And then Brett Callahan, all expensive suits and fake empathy, leaned across the glass conference cable and said it was due to budget streamlining. It wasn't even a private room, just one of those sterile glass cubes with soundproofing that doesn't really work. I could still hear Pam from marketing 2 doors down laughing about somebody's retirement cake. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I looked down at the manila folder he slid across the table like a takeout menu and gave the smallest nod I could manage without my jaw trembling. Inside, a 3-month severance, immediate termination notice, and a clause so specific it practically screamed, "Please don't sue us." Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and what time you're watching in the comments. I love seeing where this story reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You see, from the outside, I had it all together. Nice title, decent paycheck, 2 weeks of vacation I never took. My daughter Haley sent me articles about early retirement and begged me to finally get that cabin in Estes Park. But here's what they don't see on company newsletters. I missed Haley's 5th grade science fair because we were finalizing an ethics report on overseas vendors. The fireproof box was heavier than I remembered. Maybe it was just me. My arms felt like they were moving underwater, every muscle stiff from holding in too much all day. I carried it to the kitchen, set it on the table next to the untouched lasagna I'd taken out hours ago, and just stared at it. This box was never supposed to be opened. Not really. It was a failsafe, something I built over years with the kind of paranoia only people in compliance understand. You notice something odd once, you raise an eyebrow. You see it again, you make a note. And when you see it for the 6th or 7th time, signed off by the same people, brushed under the same rug, you start printing things at the library instead of the office. I open the lid. Inside, 12 years of notes, categorized by fiscal year, 3 thumb drives, each labeled by department, hard copies of inspection reports, before and after adjustments, a printed email from someone in supply chain asking if they should just use last month's cert for the new shipment, and a post-it I'd written to myself. They can't say you didn't warn them. Everything smelled faintly like vanilla and toner. I flipped through one of the folders marked Q3, Vendor Compliance. A sticky note flagged a report with photos I wasn't supposed to have. The kind that showed uninspected parts loaded into crates with forged signatures. The deeper I went, the more I felt it building, that tightness in my chest, the heat behind my ears. This wasn't a pile of observations. It was a blueprint of a cover-up, and I had built it piece by piece while pretending I didn't see what I saw. It wasn't Brett alone. That's what made it worse. This started before him. He just weaponized it, turned quiet fraud into a performance metric. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something, but I didn't. I just stood there in my kitchen, in my pajamas, with the heating vent blowing against my ankle and the clock ticking. It rang 4 times. That tiny pause before voicemail, it stretched longer than it should have. I was already pulling the phone away when I heard a groggy voice. "Hello?" I froze. Jason. He still sounded the same, low, clipped, like someone who never really left work behind. Jason? It's Caroline Masters. Silence. And then, Caroline? From Falconridge? I nodded instinctively, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know it's late. There was a pause. Then something shifted in his voice. It's actually really good to hear from you. Are you okay? No one had asked me that in a while. I was fired yesterday, 3 days before my pension fully vested. He let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a curse mixed together. Let me guess. Brett Callahan? My throat tightened. How did you know? Because I've had 2 other people from Falconridge contact me in the past 3 months. Middle managers. Quiet. Scared. They didn't have proof, just gut feelings. But you? Caroline, you don't call unless you have receipts. I blinked hard. My hands were shaking. I have more than receipts, I said. I have certified audits, email chains, reports that were changed after inspection dates, internal memos, procurement statements with impossible timestamps, even a voicemail I wasn't supposed to have. Jason didn't say anything at first. I imagined him sitting up, maybe turning on a light. Then he asked quietly, "Do you still have that fireproof box?" That made me laugh, sharp and short. Yeah, I opened it about an hour ago. It's all still here. It's worse than I thought, Jay. Okay, he said, voice shifting into something firmer, more deliberate. Then we need to meet. I'll talk to my supervisor in the morning. I can arrange for an intake meeting through the DOJ. We'll need to coordinate with... By Saturday morning, my voicemail was full. The first message was from HR. Warm, overly rehearsed. "Hi, Caroline. We wanted to clarify some severance details. Just confirming you received the paperwork. Let us know if you have any questions before Monday at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Monday. The same hour Jason said the DOJ team would meet me. Coincidence? Please. The next call came from Brett. I could hear the strain in his voice, like he was trying to act casual and barely keeping it together. "Hey, Caroline. Wanted to reach out personally. I think maybe emotions ran a bit high yesterday. I'm happy to discuss an improved package if that would make things smoother. No need to rush into any decisions. Decisions. Like the one I was already making." I didn't answer any of them. Not the texts, not the emails with read receipts attached, not the LinkedIn message from someone in communications asking if I was okay. By the time the 4th voicemail arrived, a curt, clearly annoyed message from the company's general counsel, I'd put my phone on silent and stuffed it in a drawer. "Caroline, it's imperative you return a signed copy of the severance agreement before the deadline. Legal exposure could increase if you delay." Legal exposure. I repeated the words out loud like a curse. They didn't want a signature. They wanted a muzzle. It was around 4:30 that afternoon when the doorbell rang. I froze, looked through the peephole. Brett. Wearing a navy coat too sharp for a neighborhood like mine, holding a crisp envelope, looking like a man trying way too hard not to seem desperate. I didn't open the door, just stood behind it in my socks, arms crossed, heart pounding against the wood. "Caroline, I know you're home. This doesn't need to be complicated. It's just a signature. You get your severance, and we all move on." I leaned closer to the door frame, not saying a word. "This is ridiculous," he added, louder now. "You're a reasonable woman. Just be reasonable. Be reasonable." That was what they always said when I raised uncomfortable questions in meetings, when I arrived 15 minutes early. Denver's federal building loomed against the morning sky, all brushed concrete and impersonal glass. It didn't try to comfort. It didn't pretend to care. That felt fitting. I wore my Navy suit, the one I'd saved for promotions that never came, for funerals I didn't want to attend. My hands were cold. Not trembling, just cold. Jason met me in the lobby. He looked older than I remembered, a few more lines around his eyes, a bit of silver in his hair, but his handshake was firm, grounding. He asked if I was ready. No, but I nodded anyway. He led me to a secure floor with frosted doors and numbered rooms. Inside one of them waited two people, Angela Brennan, a senior enforcement attorney at the SEC, and James Weston, a forensic accountant whose handshake was damp but sincere. They offered coffee, water, a moment to breathe. I declined all of it. I opened the briefcase. 3 hours. That's how long it took to walk through everything. I started with the oldest reports, showed how inspection certificates were reused for different shipments, how date stamps on QA documents had been manipulated after shipping deadlines passed. Then I laid out the emails, chains where managers asked for small tweaks to inspection records, or used phrases like harmless adjustments and internal alignment. James' eyebrows lifted higher with every spreadsheet. Angela took pages of notes. Occasionally, Jason would interject with context only an ex-Falconridge insider could provide. And then I played the voicemail, the one Brett left for a middle manager, thinking no one else would ever hear it. His voice came through the speaker, casual but commanding. Just get Caroline to sign off. Stall the pension paperwork if you have to. She won't fight it. She's predictable. Angela paused the recorder, looked at me. That's retaliation, she said. It's also evidence of coordinated obstruction and securities fraud if you consider what they failed to disclose to investors. I just stared at the file in front of me, tracing the spine with my thumbnail. They asked if I wanted to proceed with formal whistleblower status. I nodded.
By Tuesday morning, the tone had shifted. No more polite HR check-ins, no more Brett in disguise as friendly executive voicemails. Now it was murmurs, whispers. My old co-workers, some of them still friends, most of them polite strangers, started texting things like, "Are you okay? Something weird's happening here." They shut down Brett's Thursday meeting without explanation. There's talk of DOJ contact. Caroline, did you file something? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't trust them. I just didn't know who was still looking at me as a colleague and who was already adjusting their loyalty to protect themselves. I knew how it worked. These people weren't evil, they were terrified of being implicated, of losing their jobs, of being the next folder on Brett's desk. But fear changes people. At 10:17 a.m., someone from internal IT leaked that Falconridge had called an emergency executive session. Brett was seen storming into the building. 2 board members were flown in. By noon, the local financial blog I followed casually for years ran this headline: Whistleblower allegations shake Falconridge Tech. DOJ may be involved. No names, no direct quotes, just vague references to internal compliance flags and potential investor misrepresentation. But the comment section lit up. I made tea, chamomile, tried not to throw up. The worst part wasn't the waiting, it was being alone in the knowing. I paced the living room, watched the sun crawl across my wall like it was trying.
Wednesday morning, I returned to Falconridge's headquarters. Not through the side door like before, not with a visitor's badge. This time, I was escorted through the front. The same security guard who'd watched me carry a cardboard box out 4 days ago nodded silently and opened the door for me. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. I saw it in his eyes. Recognition. Respect. Lena walked beside me, heels clicking in rhythm. Her presence was magnetic. Sharp blazer, no-nonsense portfolio, eyes scanning every person we passed like they might turn into a deposition. We were led upstairs, not to HR, but the executive boardroom. I'd only been inside once before, when I won an internal ethics award. Nobody remembered. Now, every board member was seated at the long table, all pretending not to sweat. Arthur Delgado stood to greet us. Caroline, Ms. Powers, thank you for coming. Let's skip the courtesies, Lena said, sliding her bag onto the table. We're here to hear what Falconridge intends to do to rectify the illegal termination of my client and suppress the documentation she submitted through proper internal channels, multiple times. I didn't have to speak. Lena knew every memo I'd ever sent, every time-stamped report, every ignored escalation. Arthur cleared his throat. We're deeply regretful for how this situation was handled. Brett Callahan acted independently in terminating Ms. Mast. By Thursday morning, the gloves came off. Falconridge didn't mention me by name in their press release, but by noon, Brett Callahan sure did. He gave an interview to a mid-tier business outlet, probably thinking he could control the narrative. He called me a long-time employee with inconsistent performance metrics who had a history of internal friction. He said my claims were overblown and clearly motivated by personal disappointment over a missed promotion. I stared at the article on my laptop in disbelief, my mouth dry. Personal disappointment? He had tried to end my career 3 days before my pension vested. And now he was calling me vindictive? Lena called within minutes. Do not respond. Let the facts work. They're playing defense now. But the internet doesn't wait for facts. My name started circulating in comment threads. Former colleagues I hadn't heard from in years messaged me. Some were supportive. Others warned me. They're gonna try and bury you. Be careful. He's spinning this hard, Caroline. Their PR team is going nuclear. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I took a drive. Stopped at a small local bank I'd used since Haley was born. Tracy Ferguson, the manager, met me in her office with raised eyebrows. I've been following the headlines, she said gently. What do you need? My safe deposit box, I replied. Inside, I retrieved something I hadn't touched in 3 years, a sealed envelope labeled Executive Memos Q2 Archive. It was something I found by accident, a printed email thread between Falconridge's former CFO and 2 board members discussing ways to shift deferred revenue to inflate quarterly projections during a major acquisition review. They'd buried it in an outdated shared drive. I'd printed it, not out of malice, but because something about it felt slippery. Until now, I hadn't included it in my submission to the SEC. Monday morning came with the kind of silence that feels deliberate. No headlines, no press statements, just that eerie, anticipatory hush that settles over a battlefield before the first cannon fires. I wasn't invited to the emergency board meeting at Falconridge, but I didn't need to be. Jason texted me at 10:12 a.m. from the hallway outside the boardroom. It's chaos. 3 board members just resigned mid-meeting. DOJ agents presented preliminary evidence. Brett's face is gray. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I sat in my kitchen in the same chair where I had opened the fireproof box 9 days earlier and felt still. A few hours later, Falconridge released a carefully worded press statement. Effective immediately, Brett Callahan has been terminated for cause. Falconridge Technologies is cooperating fully with federal authorities and is conducting a full review of past compliance practices. 4 directors followed. Quiet resignations. No farewell emails. No gold watches. Just names removed from the website like they'd never existed. By that afternoon, Falconridge stock dropped another 12%. Major investors called for a shareholder audit. The house of cards was folding in slow motion, and this time, no one could pretend it wasn't rigged. Lena and I were called in the next day for a formal debrief. When we arrived at the DOJ's regional office, Angela greeted us with a thick folder labeled Confidential Priority Action. "Caroline," she said, opening the file, "your documentation didn't just expose Callahan, it confirmed fraud spanning multiple fiscal years. The SEC is preparing charges, and the DOJ will likely pursue criminal indictments for wire fraud, falsifying certifications, and securities violations." Lena didn't flinch. Neither did I. "I assume you'll be releasing a public clarification about my role?" I asked. Angela nodded. "Absolutely. You'll be named as a verified whistleblower under federal protections. And yes, your work was critical to the investigation. The DOJ is recommending the maximum whistleblower award." That last part barely registered.
6 months later, I stood in the back of a federal courtroom in Denver, watching Brett Callahan sign his name one final time. This time, on a guilty plea. He looked smaller. Not physically, really, just diminished. The confidence he once wore like a tailored suit had evaporated, replaced with a hollow, twitchy detachment. He glanced at me once as he left, escorted by 2 officers. Not out of recognition, more like acknowledgement, like he knew what I represented now. The consequence, the correction. The woman who didn't sign the folder. Outside it was sunny, warm. The kind of day Colorado sometimes gifts you when you least expect it. Lena joined me on the courthouse steps, sunglasses on, arms folded. "Well," she said, "they're all afraid of you now." I shook my head. "They're not afraid of me." She looked over. "No? They're afraid of what I documented. The truth." She smiled. "That's the same thing." I never returned to Falconridge. I declined their consulting offer. I didn't want to sit in the same building, sipping their coffee while pretending everything was new and different. Instead, I used my whistleblower award and settlement to start something else, a mentorship fund for young women going into corporate ethics. I named it after my husband, Michael. He was the one who used to say, "Your attention to detail isn't a quirk, Caroline. It's your gift." And now that gift would outlive the lies it uncovered. Haley moved back to Colorado shortly after everything blew up, said she wanted the kids to be closer. We spend Sundays by the lake now. I take the boys on slow walks where I teach them how to read